After Prime Minister Klaus's public address, the massive immigration process commenced, and thousands of new immigrants were given temporary visas. Devin writes, quote, "Not everyone who applied was accepted. Belgian immigration was mildly discerning to some degree, being careful during this fragile time to bring those on board with motives and sentiments that were aligned with Belgium's new direction, and who were perceived as being eager and able to pull their own weight, contributing to the cause. Those who qualified were quickly and efficiently ushered through. I was lucky enough, as was the majority, to fall into this category. But those who were frail, sick, and/or elderly, or perceived as having questionable motives, were detained and delayed for further scrutiny. We were given a lengthy orientation. It was several days of information about cooperatism, how the system worked, what it stood for, how it came about, what the future goals were, and what we could expect in terms of how we fit in. A great deal of time was devoted to informing us of how important conservation and recycling were to the success of this system, and that we needed to be mindful of developing these types of habits. Our personal information and statistics, skills, talents, work history, primary language, physical description, photograph, fingerprints, hobbies, and interests were all entered into the database system. We were issued probationary temporary identification badges that would expire with our visas in 6 months and would have to be renewed every 6 months thereafter for a period of 3 years. These badges gave us access to all of the means to live, just like the Belgian nationals. We could get food from the food distribution centers and fashion our own clothing and/or sift through excess items at the textile and clothing distribution centers. There was no tedious process of securing a place to live or sifting through want ads searching for a job. All of our information was entered into the workforce database, and we were placed according to need. We were issued apartment-type residences, recently constructed by the workforce, to accommodate this massive influx of population. Like the nationals, we were provided with all the amenities of standard, generic, modern life. A cell phone, a laptop computer, appliances, furniture, in short, all of the fundamentals. All means of transportation were freely available as well. The workforce supplied and maintained all of these things. The only restrictions were that we could not transport or mail any products out of the country, nor could we vote during those probationary 3 years. Other than that, everything was provided for us to proceed with our new lives, and we were quickly and easily assimilated productively into Belgian life. We immediately had purpose, a way to contribute our fair share to the system. Our worries were comparatively few, and therefore our efforts could be focused on making new friends and building new relationships, devoting our time to becoming socially acclimated to our new surroundings. This was not at all difficult to do. Even the Belgian nationals were still reacclimating socially and productively to this new way of life. For the most part, I'm finding everyone supportive, encouraging, and enthusiastic about my role in this national effort. Language was not a barrier. English was widely spoken, and there were multilingual translation apps included on our workforce-issued cell phones. My apartment was more than adequate. Everything necessary was included. I was already far better off than I had been in England. My plumbing and carpentry skills were immediately put to use in the building and construction segment of the workforce, building more temporary residences for the waves of new immigrants. I remained in that segment for more than 4 months, but then my week was split between construction and working in an appliance manufacturing plant. After about 2 months, I was transferred to an area just outside of Brussels, building new permanent residences for people in that area, which was part of the nationwide restructuring plan. These residences were not at all hastily constructed. They were ultra-modern, state-of-the-art, permanent living residences. They were designed to be flexible and versatile. Efforts were made to avoid a cookie-cutter sameness and repetition in these newly zoned residential areas. The emphasis in this system was to make living a satisfying and fulfilling experience. That was the end goal. It was not to build a strong economy. To put it another way, the workforce functions were there to serve the needs of the common man in his day-to-day happiness. There was no upper class that needed to prosper so that the common man could raise his standard of living. The benefits of all workforce labor goes directly to improving the lives of each and every common man, because that is what everyone in this system is. An ambitious plan was being implemented to rezone and restructure the layout of the entire country. Residences were made plentiful and available as the population grew, shifted, and evolved. There were architectural institutions that were not specifically part of the workforce, composed of members whose passion was architecture. And like everything else in cooperatism, these institutions were open to the public and where one could go to become knowledgeable and skilled in this area. Always having had a casual interest along these lines, I began to frequent a local architectural institute. It was amazing. People of all knowledge and skill levels were experimenting and designing mind-blowing structures, everything from super practical to pure fantasy. They would share them and discuss them and test-build different models or modules, gauging the feasibility of questionable designs, attempting to discover and remedy any flaws. The place was huge and an architectural wonder in its own right. These architectural institutes/clubs were some of the first non-workforce organizations to receive a great deal of attention and effort in terms of resource allocation and workforce support, ranking as high as medical and engineering institutes as essential components to the immediate and long-term plans of rebuilding and restructuring the country. Architectural design played a prominent and essential role. It was an integral component of every new construction project, from residences to factories to distribution centers. All across the country, these institutes were linked to each other via the communications network, which was maintained by the communications segment, and they all shared new innovations, ideas, and knowledge, working together with each other and with the engineering institutes and the building and construction segments of the workforce to produce innovative, aesthetically pleasing, and functionally practical structures for all purposes. What was being accomplished was a testament to what could happen if a society were freed from financial barriers. Not every idea was genius, not every innovation was flawless, not every implementation was impeccable, but there were no barriers to creativity or passion. Mistakes could be made and easily fixed without personal or financial ramifications. No one was losing their jobs, experimentation was not costing companies millions, profits were no longer the primary incentive, but usefulness, aesthetics, and practicality. I personally have had a difficult time shedding the management/worker mindset of my former life in England. It's only recently that I've begun to settle into the idea of joint effort. I'm starting now to adjust and see myself as an equal part of a team, not just an expendable employee. What a psychological difference that makes. As a group, we have a job to do that we all know in some small or major way is important to the lifestyle we are building for the country, for ourselves. So we get together each day as a team and jointly figure out how best to do it, and then we set to it, assisting each other in the process. There are those who tend to take the lead in certain situations, but at least in my experience, it isn't always the same people. It depends on what we're doing. We're always referring to online documentation and videos, looking at what others are doing around the country in similar construction projects. And whenever we have an idea that may be an improvement as a technique or procedure, we discuss its possible merits and then broadcast it on the internet so others around the country can critique it and/or make use of it as well. And in this way, the entire industry, and every industry, has become one team, improving their efficiency and products and services. Our contribution is not just viewed as a local effort only involving our immediate or extended group of coworkers, but more like being connected to and a part of a national undertaking. Discussions of this seems to come up in conversations quite often with my peers. It appears to be a universal feeling throughout the country. When relating to people in or outside of workforce situations, there is a commonality. Unspoken issues with regards to personal or professional status are no longer present as they were in a money system. There are individuals who are admired and respected for their skill, knowledge, ethics, and/or personality and leadership traits, but it is never because of a status-type pecking order. It is never because of their position or income or authority. This makes relationships easier, more comfortable, and more relaxed. People are not categorized according to their occupation, but rather by their interests and passions. It is a refreshing social change. In this atmosphere, it's easy to forge friendships quickly. There is no competition or social stratification that interferes with building relationships among your peers, and everyone is your peer. The entire society is wide open and transparent. The government and its policies are transparent. There are no government secrets that are kept from the general public. The government is the general public now. Each individual's personal statistics are transparent as well. They're a matter of public record. There are no societal secrets as such. Individuals may have personal secrets, but as far as society is concerned, everything is out in the open. My workforce history, where I live and have lived, my cell phone number, any awards I've received, any inventions, projects, or innovations I've participated in, the types and amounts of foods and materials I've consumed, clubs and hobbies I've participated in are all accessible to anyone on the online database. In this society, people are not in dread of being bombarded with solicitations from businesses trying to sell you something. No one is selling anything. No one is buying anything. Our participation and product usage history are used for statistical purposes. This helps to determine and aid in supply and demand. Peer pressure plays an important role in this system. There is no mandated behavior. However, public knowledge of non-participation or hoarding or a history of violent and/or destructive acts will become a matter of public record. That is a given. And this, therefore, serves as an incentive to participate and also as a deterrent to aberrant behavior. This open information policy greatly aids law enforcement in their detective work involving those individuals who still choose to indulge, even in this society, in malicious or criminal deeds. At first, I was working close to 40 hours per week, but now it has dropped to under 30, and I have time to pursue my passion for anthropology again. Once it became known to my peers that my main interests were inclined that way, I was put in contact with clubs that were forming around the country for anthropological studies. This was an answer to my dreams. The participants in these clubs pool all of their resources and materials for research, study, and discussion. We often organize trips to anthropological sites. Extensive online databases are compiled with assistance from the communication segment of the workforce, allowing members to link with other such clubs throughout the country, as well as other institutions throughout the world. It is like studying at a university, only better. There is no cost, no bureaucracy, no entrance requirements, no mandated commitment, just free access to knowledge and resources for those with an interest. I've now worked in the building and construction, appliance and product production, transportation, food distribution, communications, power, and foreign finances segments of the workforce. Life in the workforce is a constant adventure, a constant challenge, and a constant expansion of one's horizons. But so is life outside of the workforce. I've been able to experience many hobbies and pastimes through participation in many of these clubs forming around every human interest you can imagine. life has become a constant smorgasbord of interests and activities. Who would have thought life could be so diverse and fulfilling without being rich? End quote. In this next excerpt, Devin tells us about a debilitating accident one of his close friends was involved in. Quote, "A friend of mine, Jose Hernandez, an immigrant from South America, was the victim of an unfortunate and tragic accident at work today. He made a misjudgment and fell off of a ladder at a considerable height. He was rushed to the closest medical center for treatment. Later, we found out that Jose sustained a broken shoulder and hip, along with multiple spinal injuries, causing a permanent paralysis of his legs. He will be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. As soon as this was known, he was put in touch with a non-workforce organization that had formed, whose members mostly consist of individuals dealing with every imaginable physical disability. This segment of society has banded together, forming this organization as a resource and support group for those who find themselves stricken with physically disabling impairments. The organization and its members build and furnish all manner of physical aids to give people in these situations more freedom and physical independence, which, as a consequence, improves their ability to adjust psychologically and to continue to lead meaningful and fulfilling lives. Being in a cooperative system, these people's means to sustain their current lifestyles are not swept away, as is often the case in a money system. There are no financial setbacks to endure along with the already devastating physical and emotional hardships they must now deal with. If possible, they often return to the workforce, functioning in the many positions where their impairment is not a factor. They often become very active members of the Citizens with Disabilities organization, assisting in the improvement of equipment and aids that help enhance the lives of this very innovative and very active segment of the population. This is another example of how cooperatism easily manages to provide for everyone in a society without it costing society as a whole anything over and above what is already being provided. These people automatically have all the means necessary to live without having to be able to afford it. They will never find themselves in some sort of financially disadvantaged position. Depending on the severity of their disability, they may need some type of assistance in their day-to-day lives, and those willing to provide this assistance, such as family members, friends, support groups, or support organizations, automatically have the means to provide that assistance without severely encumbering their own lives and or draining their resources. This not only applies to those with disabilities, but also to the elderly. Senior citizen communities are being constructed where senior citizens themselves run and maintain the facilities with the help of friends and family members and volunteers who choose to devote time to these communities. It is not the huge problem and societal drain that it often becomes in a money system. The members themselves have the means to assist and support each other." End quote. Later, Devin writes this, quote, "These last 3 years have passed so quickly, and now I have attained full citizenship and acquired the right to vote. Voting in this country is very different from in England or any other country. We aren't voting for individuals with agendas. We vote directly on the issues, and there are not the enormous number of issues to contend with, such as in a money system. Most of the issues are local ones. There may be some local land zoning proposals or several architectural designs for a new public structure. Nationally, it's things like immigration regulations or on the handling of international finances or making foreign travel easier or restructuring, reinventing, and reorganizing the real estate of the country in general. Individuals and communities handle their own affairs without many official restrictions. There are instances that arise that aren't strictly black and white, so a voting consensus is sought for some sort of resolution. Generally, things are worked out by those involved. within the framework and guidelines of cooperative living. If a proposal is made to erect new tennis courts by the local tennis club, they are free to construct them unless the proposed site is not land that is already allocated to the tennis club. In that case, other members of the community have input. I've seen several instances of tennis courts being tiered one over the other in an effort to conserve space. What amazing structures those are. Cost is never a factor in this system, only willing participants and know-how. The members in the club task an architectural club to design the structure, and then the tennis club members, as well as any other members of society who volunteer out of interest, such as members of the architectural club or engineering club, do the construction. It is not a workforce project specifically. However, the materials, equipment, and heavy machinery are made available from the workforce. And as is the case with most projects of this nature, especially the innovative ones, there are often numerous volunteers, people who just enjoy being involved and who pitch in whenever and wherever needed. This then goes on their personal data statistics as a project they participated in. In this society, the average citizen has a very diverse set of skills because of the rotation system. People are far more able and capable of just jumping into a project like this for fun, and everyone is welcome in these projects. This is such a contrast with the money system, where construction companies would be bidding on the job, there would be contracts needed to be signed, a great deal of legal paperwork, lawyers would be involved, banks would be involved, there would be loans and collateral, labor unions squaring off with managements, insurance costs, material costs, machinery costs, deadlines, budgets, profit margins, etc., etc., etc. Under cooperativism, none of this is necessary. It just takes a large enough group of committed people with a need and/or desire to have the project done. Then they get together, figure out how to do it, and make it happen, regardless of setbacks, regardless of mistakes, regardless of time. People make it happen, not corporations and bureaucracies." End quote. Devin became an active leader in Belgium and is credited with championing and spearheading many projects and policies that improved and advanced the cooperative system, furthering its development toward the system we know today. He also went on to be a world-renowned anthropological scholar, writing several works that, as any current scholar in this field is aware, became quite influential. He and his work remained cornerstones in that field for several centuries. As Devin writes in his journal, he was not alone in his quest for Belgian citizenship. Tens of thousands poured into the country at this time, bringing with them various skills and knowledge and a great deal of commitment. Most of the immigrants were from other European countries. However, almost every country throughout the globe was represented by those adventurous enough or desperate enough to find a way to the Belgian border. The Great Migration and its resulting foreign influx of talented, inspired new citizens became the leverage and support needed for Belgium to surge ahead with its ambitious plans. This enthusiastic, eager addition to the workforce allowed the country to reach beyond its expectations and timeframes and be carried along by a new and powerful momentum.